Hey, how's it going everyone? Ryan here, and welcome back to the series where I ramble on about my games in the Transatlantic Professional Go League. So, after a struggle with the games against Artem, I managed to make it into the finals after making a comeback. So here we are. Now, my finals opponent is against Ilya Shikshin, 4-Dan Professional. I've actually played quite a few games with Ilya by now, although I have had a few encounters with him before we turned pro, but after becoming professional, I haven't really had a chance to play many games against him officially until I participated in these leagues. So here we are. I mean, it's a best of 3, which is a little bit different from previously, which was best of 5. In best of 3, there are less chances to make errors, but also each game counts more. In the first game, I nigiri'd and I got white, which I thought was, I don't know, for a best of 3, because you alternate colors for the first 2 games, it doesn't really matter if you get black or white, because in whatever color you get in the second game, you get the opposite color anyway. And if it goes 1-1, then in the third game, we simply nigiri. And black and white actually does give you a little bit of a psychological boost because, as we know, the Komi is very big, and whenever you open an AI, that percentage, that tiny bit of percentage difference, even though we know it's not going to affect our game, but it gives you that slight psychological boost. So, in the first game, I wanted to play peacefully. Just like with every game against an opponent that is really good at fighting. You want to play relatively peacefully, to start off. So that was sort of my plan to go in with. And that plan actually worked quite well. In the first game, as you can see, when I was white, I did a low approach. I don't really like to play the high approach because it gives black too much territory to begin with, and I don't really like this variation. So if white connects and then attaches, this is all pretty normal, and then white would usually just extend, right? But black gets a lot of territory and black gets sente. I used to play this opening quite a lot when I was black. But with white, I didn't really like it very much. And now, I guess a lot of people just low approach, and I think it's okay. So I kind of expected a pincer, and then I was going to think about what I was going to do after that. So if black plays the 2-space pincer, then I think I was just going to knight's move. So even though this probably will end up in a very complicated variation, but I've seen this quite a lot and I have a decent knowledge about this. I mean, I'm definitely no expert, but I feel I was still confident that I wouldn't lose too much locally. So even though I was all geared for that, I didn't really expect my opponent to simply diagonal. I mean, if Artem plays this or if Ali plays this, I wouldn't be surprised, but still a little bit, I'm surprised to see Ilya play this. Yeah. And now white plays after white plays the extension move, which was a pretty big move considering black's upper right corner, black approaches the lower left. And then, consistent with my idea, I just decided to play the kick. Now here's an interesting aside. At this point, Ilya actually misclicked. So he actually played somewhere on the right side of the first line, which was obviously a mouse misclick. And then, which was interesting because it might say something about how sort of his mentality. Was he a little bit nervous? It could be just chance, and I'm probably just overthinking this, but he might be a little nervous going into the tournament, more so than I was. And that might have caused him to play a little bit different than his usual, which is interesting. And we would see that in the upper left. So after black makes another quick Joseki move, black extends up, and then white makes the low invasion. So this invasion is sort of like a Miai move. If black extends on top, white would just do a 2-space extension to attack black's 2 stones. And on the other hand, if black does a 2-space extension here, white would make black not alive. So that was my plan. However, the next move was very, very surprising, and I almost fell off my chair when I saw this move, actually, because it was just really surprising. I mean, the cap here is definitely not a good move because, first of all, there's not really that much to do with influence, and also it's very clear that black is not going to gain very much from the attack. It's very easy for white to settle on the left side, and after that, black is really just left with some stones in the center. And so I don't think that was a good move. So I think black should just do one of these pincer moves, and then it would still be a relatively peaceful game where we have a running fight going into the middle, and then all players would have their small territories. So when my opponent played there, I made the peep, and then this jump was also a little bit, it's probably slightly worse, and then played the knight's move. So at this point, I was feeling pretty good, because not only does white gain some eye space on the left, and also made black already into a weak shape, but also white can try to break through in the middle. So now black has to settle the group, so black plays the Hane attachment, which is locally a very common move played to settle the group. So in the game I just extended because I didn't want to give black any forcing moves, and then black attaches. So here we had a quick trade where black connects back, but black makes white very strong on the left, and also after taking sente, white was able to get this attachment. And after getting this move, I was feeling very good because right here there's so many forcing moves with the shape, so black is not very strong. On the other hand, white is pretty much alive, and white can threaten the black group. And you can see that white didn't really lose any territory in the process. So at this point, it was going very well. And then I got too happy. So I made a pretty bad mistake, or I guess a series of mistakes, really. So the first mistake I made was this one space jump. A knight's move would clearly be better, and for reasons we will see later. But when black made the sacrifice sequence, this turn was also a relatively big mistake. And the reason is also very simple. I mean, after this move, black could connect and then come back here. So if white captures now, locally white would have to add an extra move to make this alive. And that is a huge difference compared to if white simply captured. So instead of this move, white should simply push through, because then black still needs to go on the outside, and then white could, I guess there's multiple options, but let's just say white connects and then black blocks here, right? Black gets gote, white is very comfortable here. White got so much territory, black is not very strong. It is also just white's turn, and I think I would be very happy with just taking a side extension at this point, having a big territory lead after the fight on the left. But luckily, my opponent missed that as well. So Ilya actually just turned. And after this move, I think this is the point of no return. Because not only does white get the turn, now when white captures the two stones, black cannot even enclose properly. And that forced black to keep pushing here just to settle the group and make it stronger. And at the end of this sequence, black not only gave white additional territory, but this center stones is not that useful because white can still jump out to the center at any point. And this is the type of game where any professional Go player would love most. Not only white has a lot of territory, but also there are no weak groups, and black does not really have any big influence or moyos to build off of. So actually, after this, I was already feeling I probably had this game in the bag. But of course, with any game, you can't really think too much about that. You just have to think about the moves and play the game as normal until your opponent resigns. So I held my cool, and I was pretty happy with how I dealt with the game afterwards. So I just made an extension here and let black do the double hane, because this is a gote move. Black still needs to find a chance to connect there. So black tried to develop the lower side, but really at this point, white just had so solid groups that white could really just poke in from every single direction. So the center is very hard to develop at this point. And so I just went with the territory, and then black kept trying to build the middle, but reducing it was relatively easy because all the white groups are relatively strong. And then so there was a quick trade here, but it was relatively even anyway. Maybe even white gained a little bit And so after that, I just tried to play very solid. And then here I went the crosscut because there were just so many forcing moves on the left side that black didn't really have any move to respond. So after this, white was even able to capture the left side in exchange for giving a few extra stones in the center. So by doing this, white actually increased the lead a little bit. And so after that, it was just playing solid, taking the big moves, and not letting my opponent catch any of my weaknesses. So at the end here, I was able to win. Now, if you really think back about this game, it was actually pretty much one-sided. And the reason for this is for two reasons. So of course, Ilya made a few relatively big mistakes that he usually doesn't make. But also, he was very unlucky because this was a very solid game, right? If all players have very solid groups and one player makes a relatively big mistake, it's really hard to catch up because the game is so simple, right? There's really no fights to start and there's no big things to take and there's no moyos and no groups to attack. Then the game is just simple and it's going to be very easy. So I was actually very happy with this game because I believe this is the only game in which I didn't really give my opponent a chance. Now, in particular, I was very happy with how I dealt with the lead, and I was able to carry it out to the end. And of course, I got very lucky because my opponent made those mistakes, but carrying it out to the end in such a smooth way is not very easy, so I was very happy about this first game. And after this game, that feeling changed my mentality a little bit in the second game, and we'll see that game right after this. Now, going into the second game is when things really hyped. Being ahead one up, going into the second game, of course, has a very big advantage because even if I lose the second game, I still got the first game. But it's also a very dangerous mentality to have because once you lose that second game, then we're all square. And then the player who won the second game would actually have the advantage going into the third game. And so it's a double-edged sword. So, of course, I took black and we swapped colors. And I was hoping my opponent would let me play my go-to opening, but maybe I talked about that too much in a commentary or during my videos so that everyone knows about it now. And it seems like most people would just play here now. And so I wasn't able to do that. So then I just still played this because the strategy in the first game worked so well that I was hoping maybe I could carry that out to the second game as well. And again, the second game is very important because if I did lose, in the third game, my opponent would have that psychological advantage, having won the most recent game going into the final game. And so, even though I was leading, I have to be very careful. So here, white invades the 3-3 point, plays out a quick joseki, and I decided to play the one-space jump. Recently I've been preferring this a little bit more because it's the more solid move, and it's just a little bit easier to control compared to the two-space jump. But of course, you can play really any move you want to defend the corner. So then white split, and black, of course, takes this side because this side makes the corner into a good shape. Now white does the two-space extension, and then black diagonal and capped. Perhaps here black could hane first to prevent white from descending, because after descending I realized that locally black doesn't really have any good move to follow up. But I mean it's okay because black took sente and black can come down to the bottom. So this is a common move to pincer, an AI move in fact. It's a common way to attack white's corner because later on there's still the one space extension, and I was expecting Ilya to just defend. Well, I guess not expecting. I should change my wording. I was hoping he would play here because then black could just comfortably extend back, and then again we would have a relatively peaceful game, and who knows what would happen later. But in this case, he clearly did not want that, and I think when in the commentary, Ali mentioned that Ilya wasn't really playing like his normal self. Like he's typically the more aggressive type. He would play moves to maximize efficiency, despite it looking more aggressive than normal. And I think this is a really good example of that. So when white invades, it's not an overplay, of course, because locally it's an even fight. But it just seems like it's generally a more pressuring move compared to the relatively solid move of just kicking and defending the corner, as I shown earlier. So is Ilya back to his normal self? Well, yes. So after I jumped out, white actually played another move that was also very interesting because, of course, it's trying to get at this attachment, which is a very good, annoying move for black. It's very annoying because it's going to help settle the group. But I don't think this is a good move in itself because it's just such a weak connection, and black could invade. There are many ways for black to invade, maybe even shoulder hit, for example. In a game, though, I was thinking about this, and I didn't really want to do that quite yet because there's a clear, very big move, and in the case that I do get gote, white would just take the c4 move. So I wanted to go b3 first and see how white escapes. Now, also a bit to my surprise, white did not jump out. White played the knight's move. So this is my problem when I play against EGF pros, is because it's so hard to predict my opponent's moves. It's just I'm not sure. Like somehow the ways I think they would play is always different from what they actually think. But maybe it's not just EGF. Actually, that's an incorrect statement. No matter who I play, even when I play the ROC, the random opening challenge, it's just so hard to predict my opponent's moves. I don't know there's something wrong with me. So what I expected is that white would jump out, and then black might cap, or then I would actually consider this move, because this is clearly a good exchange for black in terms of territory. So that was my plan. But then when white played the knight, I was like, I'm gonna have to reconsider, because now if I pull back when white extends, locally black's shape is not very good because there's a c4 weakness, and then there's gonna be a push and cut. So I decided to push and cut. Because black has so many stones here, there's no reason why black should defend. And of course, I read out some of the variations, and it seems like white didn't really have that many ways to counter. So after push and cut, white actually extended, and then black extended. I was also thinking maybe white would just do something like this, because then this at least, even though white sacrificed the stone, at least white would go out very easily. So it just felt like that this fight would favor black quite a bit, because here white is already surrounded, but white hasn't even cut black off yet. So here white was forced to play a few forcing moves. And then, of course, black needs to block here. You never want two weak groups to connect. So here's another mistake. White should not have descended. White should have actually pulled back, because then this local life and death, there would be no issues. But in the game, white actually descended, and this allowed a future life and death issue. So after doing here, white also went in the corner. So you can see here, like most of this is really a definition of Ilya style. His style is very pressuring. Whenever there is a more aggressive move or more pressuring move, he never plays the relatively calm move. And there's a very good reason for this, because if white plays here, because of the corner aji, the descent is pretty much sente. So this move really is not that big, because black can always jump all the way inside. So this actually, I think, makes sense. Maybe white should turn though, but because I feel the corner is not as important compared to the outside. So after white played there, I invaded, and then I decided to exploit the aji in the corner. And locally, white cannot completely live. This is also a little bit to my surprise, because after pushing and connecting, white was forced to play this diagonal, and locally there's still a ko. Now here is what went wrong now in this game. So at this point, I was taking a lot of time, because it's the end of a fight, and it's time to evaluate. But at this point, the game is still very hard to control. There's still a lot of unsettled areas. For example, this lower side, this ko here, this upper right is completely unsettled, and there's a very big move in the upper left corner because it's completely untouched. Right? So even though it feels like black is leading, because black made white into a very small corner and left a ko here, which black could choose to start at any point. And so this is the point where I almost lost it. Yeah. So in the first game I had so much success. It was such a clear win that I was a little bit overwhelmed. I wanted to put even more pressure on my opponent. I wasn't thinking too much about the moves now. I was thinking a little bit about the result. I was thinking, oh, I could seal this off 2-0. I'm going to win this. And there came the problem. So in the game, I wanted to try and use the fact that there's a ko. I mean, the thinking was okay, but the way I did it was completely wrong. So after clamping, Black's shape was so weak here, but still Black Atari'd and Atari'd. So this sequence was it was an overplay. Because after attaching White cuts, and very clearly, Black has two weak groups, White can live at any point, so locally it's just very difficult for Black. And the whole reason for this is to create co-threats, but Black is losing so much that, as you see later in the game, Ilya just gave up the 10 points here. Well, it's a little bit more than 10 points, but so that was a very big mistake by Black. And that led to this whole new game. I mean, originally it could have been a relatively peaceful game. I mean all Black needs to do is just approach a corner. It's just clearly Black's is clearly ahead. I mean, this local result, I don't think anyone could convince me this was better for White. So Black is clearly ahead. All Black needs to do is continue normally, and especially having so much success in the first game, I'm honestly a little bit disappointed in myself because this is such a clear move, and I just didn't stop myself. And normally I wouldn't play a move like this. Normally I'm usually very calm and I would be consistent, but this is a time when it slipped away, and it almost it did cause the whole game to slip away. So after this, after White cut, Black has to save this, and then after this sequence, Black diagonal, White lives, and now Black jumps out. So this fight is not very good because after this attachment, Black does not have a very good way to escape. Extending is very heavy, and so White would just extend out, and I didn't really want to do that, but I probably should have. So in the game, I just Hane because I saw there was something I could do to the bottom. And another partial reason for making the Hane is this ko, right? But then in the game, I completely neglected the fact that this is only 14 points. Right? This is only a Gote 14 points endgame. But now I've lost all of these stones here for pretty much no reason. And so this is such a terrible result locally for Black. And when Black finally went down to play this ko, White just played here. I mean, there's no reason for White to start the ko. White just lives, and now Black is in trouble. Because all Black gained was this, well, technically only half of this Gote 14 points, sorry. So really only 7 points. And now, look at this loss. Black, for no reason, lost the 3 stones. This group is weak. And this is a whole load of disaster. Okay, so I need to come up with something, and I did. So what I did was I Hane'd and extended to keep the lower White group weak. And I thought this was a good rhythm to naturally capture the White stones. Because locally White's not alive, and because of a Sente move at P8, White doesn't really want to go out this way. There's no point running into the Black stone. So White has to escape this way, and then White has to escape. And in the process, Black can naturally, finally, capturing the 14 points that I was looking at the whole time, and then White escapes. And I think this was a decent way to handle it. I mean, I feel like after this, Black was a little bit better compared to before, because, at least we've finally got these points in the bag that I was looking at pretty much the whole time here incorrectly. But in terms of territory, it's still extremely close, just because of how much White gained here on the right. Yep. And then, while it was still close, I made another relatively big mistake, I think. This cut was just so crazy. There's just no reason why I should have cut here. I mean, okay, there was time pressure, and I was trying to get a quick sente, but there's absolutely no reason why white would just simply Atari. I did what was I expecting, right? Of course, white would counterattack. I mean, this gets rid of all the center forcing moves and makes it so that the turn also gote. So black's group is very weak, but now all black gained was just a little bit, tiny bit here. This was way too greedy. So I think black should have just did something in the top left. If I were to play this again, I would just go to the top left. This pretty much, if what I did on the right side put the game in a relatively close state, this game was going to throw it all away. So after white cuts, black had to protect this group. Otherwise, when white takes this whole group is going to be weak, and well, guess what? The whole upper side is going to be white's territory. So now white just defends this. And so I was actually very happy to get this back. Yeah, so this move I think white should have taken, because this move makes black extremely weak here, and it's a very big sente move. And so, I think white, all white needs to do is simply extend, or maybe knight's move and extend. And it's very difficult for black to respond. But black has to respond. So that's the thing. It's a sente move that causes the whole black shape in the middle here to be very awkward. And this is an extremely big move. Even bigger than this corner defense, which looks very tempting. Because black doesn't have any chance to ignore, right? Black has to respond. Otherwise, this whole group will be dead and then cut off. So it's a very big thickness move, but also a lot of points, and creates a weak group. So I feel like after I got this back, then the game felt a lot better. And in the game, Ilya actually threw in, because if white didn't answer, the connection to S1 is also sente. So that really says how big this was, because it's pretty much a double sente. So after that, this upper left was normal. So white invaded to keep pressure on the group. Black exchanges first and then jumps out. So all of this looks relatively normal. And at this point, I thought it was a really close game. There's no reason to feel ahead. Yeah, it's a very messy game. And I was actually extremely nervous at this point, because remember, this is the second game, but if I lost it, then Ilya would have a very good psychological advantage for the final game. But also, this type of game is, what Ilya is really good at. I feel like he's really good at these big fighting moves, and he's known for being a very, very strong reader. So at this point, white plays here, and then I chose to play the diagonal. This is probably the wrong shape, but then I kind of lured white into playing an incorrect move. By the way, at this point, both of us are pretty much on our last period, so we were all we only don't really have that much time to read out the full variations. And in such a complicated fight, it's really hard to see the best move. So in this case, I think white should just jump back, because black is gote, and so white can get sent into attack. So in the game, white pushed in, and then black diagonaled, and then white jumped. And then here I made such a ridiculous mistake, I feel. Why did I not make this exchange? This is absolutely crazy, because in the game, I extended. I was like, there's no way he could cut, right? Because when I connect, it's always sente. But no, it's not, because when white cuts, if black goes here, white can simply capture the two stones. Black cannot save the two stones anymore. And in the corner, it's very hard to win the capture race, because this L4 shape with so many forcing moves, white can make that boxy 5 shape in the corner, which right now has 7 liberties, and that's way too much for black. But luckily, I had to connect back, because right now white cannot push through. So I was really lucky there. So after white captured, I was still able to save the big group. I mean, even though white captured in these, black still got something in return. And so I was lucky to have that, because I completely didn't see I was going to get cut. And chances are that could have been the game, right? So I think luck was really on my side at that moment. So after Haning, I made the turn to get a little bit of points. And then I turned, and then I made the cut. And this was really to keep some pressure on the white group, because if black plays L18, white's group it only has 1 eye. So first, but first we need to protect our own group. So I connected here, And then, this is really the the final stretch here. The game is so complicated again after white descends. I apologize for taking so long explaining the variations, but there's just so much going on in this game, and I feel like all the variations contribute to all this excitement. And so after white descends, there's really no other option for black. You can't just play here because white just gets so much territory. Right? After capturing the 2 stones and connecting all the stones back, black has nothing left. And so that was really not an option in my 30 seconds that I had to think about. So I had to prevent, and then white attaches. This is a very difficult move to respond to. And really the only move is the tiger smell. Because if black blocks, this diagonal threatens to push through. So that would not work for black. Because if black connects, white would just capture the other 5 stones. And so the only move really is to play the tiger smell, which I did find in the game. And then when white hane, there was really nothing for black to do. Because if black goes here, the Atari is sente. So locally, black will not be able to win the capture race. So this is a big problem. And now, black had to hane, but then white connects. So again, we have this huge trade happening. Imagine, in the 30 seconds, the finals, we have all these trades happening, and we have to continuously evaluate the situation over and over again. So white got this huge territory profit on the top. Originally it was black territory, now it turned all into white's territory. So what did black gain? Well, after extending, white's groups are in a lot of danger. So white needs to escape. And at this point, it also doesn't look very clear whether or not black could capture white either. So after black makes the Atari, I was feeling grave. This whole trade, just black losing so many points here. It's almost a 25-point plus gain for white, considering how much territory black had here, right? And if black can't capture anything back, it's looking very, very, very dangerous. Yeah, but over here, it still looks. Oops, sorry, that move didn't register. So after white captures, black still has a lot to go on because over here, even if white can break through, if white makes black too strong, black can simply connect this stone back and then capture this whole bottom. And so black still has a lot of chances to go. It's not like, white has a clear lead or anything. It's just that, the feeling when, the game was, first I was winning by a lot, and then it was close again, blundered, and then white was ahead, and then back to close, but then white just snatched that territory lead, and it's very uncertain. That feeling was, it's definitely, it's so nerve-wracking. And at this point, I didn't have a choice. I had to capture, because if I answer here when white captures, it's going to be sente. So I have to capture now, and then white comes over to attack, and then now black is steal. So basically now it's a trade, because black gained a lot of points here in sente, white gained a lot of points here. So it's pretty much a trade at this point. So white did a lot of did some attacks here. The wedge was an important move because then it activates another attachment. And then I lost a little bit by this Atari exchange because I didn't see that white could have just pulled back and extended. For some reason, I thought white had some connection issue because when black peeped here, white could attach and cut, which is actually a common to Suji here to ensure the connection. So after Ataring, white cuts, I had to make this group alive. So then I just made these series of exchanges, and then finally white extended here. Okay, so now it's still very close, but it felt that black was slightly ahead. Now honestly, it took me 20 Byoyomi periods to finally count that I was slightly ahead, but I was so super nervous. There's only 30 seconds. And I just had to try to force myself to play, normal moves that I can see that is clear. And so all of these moves that you see right here, from D13 to, the double hane, I was able to see in a relatively short amount of time so I can, keep counting. And then I made this trade, which is probably unnecessary, but it was still relatively even, so it didn't really make a big difference. So after descending, white captured, but then white has another, black has another weakness here, so white was still able to capture the black 3 stones in Sente. So black gained a little bit here, but it was not super much. So here, when white extended, that's the second time when I got really nervous. I was like, okay, well, I was looking at this and I thought white couldn't extend here, but then white still extended, right? And then it's like, okay, well, did I misread, right? Now I was on my last period. I was thinking so hard, and luckily I had a very convenient time suji here. This really saved my life because after exchanging this, I was able to fully read the wedge, and that worked. So I was able to sacrifice the stone there and then come back here. So this is the point where I knew I won. And so after that, I was like, okay, we have the lead. We just got to finish this, play normally. Don't make any blunders. And that's what I did. So here, I think white probably should have fought the ko a little bit harder because the push was not a big enough ko threat. And then after white won the ko, everything was completely certain. So after that, we had some extra small endgames, which I think wasn't really a big deal. And maybe white gained a slight amount during the endgame. So right at this moment, I won by 1.5 points. This was such a big moment. I mean, it was, okay, so it was the second time when I participated in a league format tournament with the EGF pros. And the result have been very good. But, I mean, this whole game was such an emotional roller coaster. It went from, I was leading so much after lower left. And then the game was very close again after I started to think too much about the ko, and I lost so many points on the right side. And then it got really close again. And then it was all just very... it was just, one player gets territory, one player gets weaker, but then the other player gets some territory back and gets a little bit stronger, So there was just that constant nerve going on. And I think, honestly, that's what I love the most about Go. I mean, I think from my whole experience about playing Go, especially after I became pro, those are the moments that really make me feel alive when I'm playing that. I feel like I'm almost completely submerged inside the Go board, and I'm only thinking about the game and nothing else. It feels like the world just completely disappears, and I honestly really love that feeling. And Ilya is such an awesome opponent to play against because I know his reading is really, really, really strong. And so when we participated in the International Elite Mind Sports competition, on the bus, I was actually talking with Ilya and Pavel, and I showed them this life and death problem. And it was a problem that I was working on. I saw this from one of my friends. They posted it, and then I was actually reading it for a few days, and I didn't really see an obvious answer. But then Ilya was looking at it, and 5 minutes later he comes over and he's like, "Oh, you just play there and there and there." And then I was like, "Oh." And then, so that was of course, like, it's one problem, it doesn't mean anything, but I mean, it's just a random problem I gave him, and he just completely solved it in 5 minutes. So Ilya has really, really strong reading skills, and so playing against him really helps my consistency, because when you play against him and you make any slight reading mistake, you bet he's going to catch it, right? But no one is a computer. We all make mistakes. There's always these ups and downs in the game, and that's what makes the games really fun, and that's what makes Go, and yeah, so I had a blast playing in this tournament as a whole. We'll definitely do it again, and if you guys are interested, I will make 2 follow-up videos on my rounds against Ali and Tanguy in the league matches. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you did enjoy it, be sure to drop a like because it really helps our channel. Also, feel free to subscribe to our channel to check out our other videos and also receive updates whenever we post them. Enjoy your weekend, and I will catch you in the next video.